Hello and welcome to today's CQI webinar, which is a case study, which is going to be presented by Christian Cranfield. Christian has been a quality practitioner for 30 years, but I think it's fair to say he's never quite faced challenges like what he's about to tell us today. Christian was the group project executive for a project by Alfred H Knight. Alfred H Knight won the first ever Digital Innovation Award at last year's International Quality Awards for this project. And at this point, I'd like to remind you that applications for this year's awards are still open. And we're going to put a link in the chat so you can find more about this. And there's also in my background right now, you can see a link to more information about these awards. If you've got any questions for Christian during the course of this webinar, put them in the Q&As rather than the chat section. We'll be monitoring the Q&As, and at the end, I'll be able to put as many questions as possible to Christian and see if Christian can answer them for you. I think that's all the housekeeping. We are absolutely delighted to be able to bring you some of the best examples of quality management practice in our webinar series, and delighted that Christian is here today to speak to you. We really hope that you will enjoy this. I've had a sneak peek of what's coming up, and I'm pretty confident you will. But now over to Christian. Thank you very much, Christian.
So firstly, Gareth, thank you very much for the introduction. A brief introduction from myself, first of all. So my name's Christian Cranfield. I led the Digital Innovation Project with Alfred H Knight. My background is that I've been a quality professional for over 30 years now. I started my career as a quality controller in one of Europe's largest manufacturing operations. And that gave me exposure to a lot of world-class manufacturing tools and techniques that still very much influence what I do today. So I've got really strong influences from ISO 9000, TQM, Six Sigma, and lean manufacturing. And very much use all of those influences in the major projects that I run. I ran my first continuous improvement project quite some time ago as a teenager in the early 90s. So had a lot of experience over the years and have been involved with the CQI for quite some time as well now. So I joined the CQI in 2001 and was honoured to be invited to host the first Quality World webinar a couple of years ago on change management. Now, over the last 10 to 15 years, I've run major projects and have always used technology to drive business improvement. I think it's important in the context of what we're going to discuss today that there's an appreciation I don't have a technology background. I'm not IT trained in any way, but as a systems and process thinker, over the years, I've got drawn more and more heavily into technology orientated projects. Okay, on to the next slide, thank you. So a brief introduction to the company. So Alfred H Knight works in the mining sector. It's a leading global inspection and testing company working with minerals and metals. Our global head office is in Liverpool in the UK, and we work all across the world in over 40 countries and at any touch point through the logistics chain where inspection might be required on the commodities. I'm confident we work in over 3,000 locations across the globe, so got an extensive coverage. What's unique about the organisation is that it's a fifth generation family owned business established in the late 1800s. And the nature of the family owned business is such that the organisation culture is quite unique. They pride themselves on being very nimble, agile and dynamic in the way that they work. And it's those qualities that I was able to draw upon when delivering this technology project. Prior to the award-winning project, the AHK board already had a strategy in place for developing technological solutions for capturing the inspection data and reporting it globally. But this project in the DRC was the first major project where we brought technology into operations. Okay, into the next slide. Technology is already used in many sectors within the inspection industry, but within metals and minerals, there are some very unique industry-wide challenges with digitizing the inspection services for one type of inspection in particular, which is the weighing and sampling of the material. The reason it is so complex is because there's inherent variability and intricacy of the processes wherever you may be in the supply chain. So the inspection processes within a mine, a transshipment and that port could all be very different in different locations in different countries. So trying to design and implement one technology that works for all is extremely difficult. Part of the complexity occurs because typically the inspection is carried out across numerous locations, but also with one or more inspectors, and different parts of the inspection could be happening at different times. Okay, thank you. So what I'd like to do now is talk you through the project itself, how we approached it, our strategy, tools and techniques, and also how we overcame some of the unprecedented challenges that I've certainly never faced before in any of the projects that I've run. So if we move on to the next slide, the project itself was based at a new mine that was located in the Democratic Republic of the Congo in Central Africa. The mine will very quickly become the second largest copper mine in the world. And pre-COVID, AHK was appointed to provide weighing and sampling inspection services. Now, what made this project different from other mines that we work in across Africa and in fact across the rest of the world was the exceptionally high volume of inspection data that needed to be captured for every bag of material that came out of the mine. The objective for the project was to replace the traditional paper-based inspection processes with mobile technology. There was a recognition that for a mine of this size, it would be extremely difficult to implement the normal paper-based inspection processes and provide the information at the speed that our clients required it. Now, our international clients were very clear with this right at the very start of the project, that they required real-time inspection data. So it was quite a jump from the traditional ways of working through to a technology solution that would be able to provide accurate real-time inspection data. Now, the mine opened in the middle of the COVID-19 global pandemic, which created a huge range of challenges for us, which I'll walk you through shortly. Okay, thank you. On to the next slide. What I want to do over the next few slides is to talk you through the project management and quality management tools and techniques that we used on this digital innovation project. We'll have a look at how we defined the customer's requirements and what the overall technology solution looked like, how we set up the project and maintained the support of our board all the way through, how we used the Kaizen strategy to make sure that we were continually involving everyone and improving the solutions, and then spend an extended period talking about process tools and techniques, because right at the very start of the project, I recognized that in order to solve the challenges that the industry had faced, it was all about process. I'll move on to talking about how we created mutually beneficial supplier relationships, and then how we managed the implementation, continuous improvement and communication processes. So just to recap then on the project itself, we were looking to replace paper-based inspection processes with mobile technology that not only enabled us to capture the inspection data, but also enabled us to start a global material tracking process where the very first point in the process was in the sub-Sahara. Okay, thank you. On to the next slide. Defining the customer's requirements and looking through the lens of the customer was essential in terms of making sure we truly understood our project scope and deliverables. It was a complex project because it involved multiple stakeholders, and each stakeholder had a very different set of needs. So our three key stakeholders on the project were our international clients, the mine itself, and our operations team in the DRC. So our international clients' requirements were defined through the initial contract negotiation meetings. They were very clear with us about what they wanted in terms of inspection data. The inspection data is critical because it was used and is used in all the financial contractual settlements of all parties involved. So complete and accurate data is absolutely paramount. The mine's requirements for AHK working in partnership with the mine on their site were defined through the operations process reviews once the mine opened. Their primary requirement was that however we chose to work with our technology, we could not slow down their huge production operation. And then last but certainly not least was our own team. What did they need from a mobile technology solution? We defined their requirements through multiple planning and brainstorming sessions that were carried out very early in the process. The stakeholder needs analysis that we went through made sure that we had a very clear project definition. We understood the resource requirements for the project, and particularly importantly, we ensured that with the scope that we defined, there was no scope creep, and we're able to maintain a laser-guided focus on our customers' needs. Okay, on to the next slide. So what was our digital solution? Well, the components of our digital solution were as shown on the right-hand side of the slide. So the first thing we needed was a mobile device that we could give to our inspectors that they could use to capture the inspection information. We needed mobile device management software to allow us to control all of the mobile devices from the UK. So that would involve managing the security, managing the apps, the app upgrades, pushing out solution upgrades, and so on. One of the most important elements of the technology was the data capture software. So this is the software that was essentially configurable templates that allowed us to design a data capture process that ultimately we needed to align to the on-site production processes. That flexibility within the templates included inspection data capture, photographs, QR code and barcode scanning, and so on. We needed a database because once we'd captured all our inspection data, we needed to be able to manage the data and then display it through administrator dashboards and also report the information in line with our clients' expectations. Okay, on to the next slide. The way we managed the project was very important in terms of ensuring that it was a success. So the first thing we did was made sure that whilst working in partnership with our experienced colleagues in IT, it was very much a business-led project. And I always work through a project board because the project board provides strategic guidance on the project, whereby I also have one of the exec, our global senior operations exec, who was the sponsor for key decisions. This was really important for me because there was various times in the project where I needed to discuss strategy, discuss key decisions around the solution design, discuss implementation strategies, and so on. Quality is at the heart of everything that AHK does. And this continued to be displayed through the strong quality leadership that the senior management displayed through the whole of the project. My project team on this project is actually a very small team. There's only 6 of us, but one thing that we all have in common is that we all have a very strong background in process. So as an example, my project lead is a fellow from Cranfield University in lean manufacturing. My group implementation manager is WIM 100 nominated lady, is one of the most inspirational women in mining. I have one of the AHK country managers from Africa seconded onto the project, a member from the AHK consultancy division. So it was a strong investment from the AHK project board in the project itself. And we were able to use all of those process skills in the hybrid quality management strategy that I always employ, where it's very much focused on TQM principles and Six Sigma and the Six Sigma toolkit. The way that we managed this the way that we managed this project was using software called Asana, which worked extremely well for us and meant that we could be very dynamic in the way that we managed the project. Okay, on to the next slide. So the contract at the mine was secured pre-COVID, and then the global pandemic hit, and it meant that we had to completely change the way that we approached the project because of some of the challenges this now created. So if we can move on to the next slide, I'm now going to talk you through the unprecedented project challenges that we faced on this project. So the first 2 relate to the technology itself. The nature of the inspection requirements means that there's actually no off-the-shelf mobile technology solution available for this sector and this type of inspection. So we had to design something from scratch. Additionally, there's no database available that could transpose and display the data in the way that we needed to for our global users. So even prior to COVID, we had some significant technology challenges that we needed to overcome. But the real challenges came from the restrictions that COVID imposed. The first one was our inability to visit the mine due to the travel restrictions. Now, that, as I'm sure you can imagine, created a whole host of problems for us. We couldn't carry out a pilot because although we work at other mines in Africa, no 2 mines are ever the same. And because we couldn't travel to the DRC and go on to site, we didn't have an opportunity to process map the on-site operations. Furthermore, we couldn't get any insight from our DRC operations team on the ground because they were unable to visit the mine until 6 weeks before opening. So it wasn't until that point that we actually got the standard operating procedure from the mine to get an idea of how they might be set up and might work. Our users of the mobile technology were not English speaking either, so our inspectors on site are Congolese French, and very few of them speak English. So capturing their feedback and translating it into technology improvements was also a challenge. Our best laid plans were also severely affected because the owners of the mine brought forward the opening date. So everything that we had lined up within the project program had to be shuffled and reprioritized. And then if that wasn't challenging enough, the mine chose to optimize their production processes as soon as they opened. So the technology solution that we designed was then no longer aligned to the way that they had decided to work. The strategy for this project is the same strategy that I have always used, which is to take a Kaizen approach So engaging the employees is something I focus a lot on, making sure that I involved everyone. I knew that involving everyone with the challenges of this magnitude were crucial to success. I always work with no hierarchies, no blame culture, and create a culture where we break down barriers and everybody, whatever level they are in the organisation, gets the opportunity to contribute and really make a difference to the project. All of the brainstorming sessions had to be done from home. So we had to replace the typical sessions we'd do with a whiteboard collectively in the office with daily video conferences where we were brainstorming solutions every day to the challenges that we were facing. But what we found was that by working together and drawing on our collective expertise, we were always able to find solutions to the problems. Okay, on to the next slide. The plan, do, check, act cycle, step one. So I always use the PDCA approach. So in creating the plan, our stakeholder reviews had given me very clear project deliverables, which the project board had signed off. I was able to translate those into the program requirements. We set the project up in Asana with clearly defined tasks, roles, and responsibilities. And I was managing this with our IT project manager on a daily basis. The complexity and the criticality of this project to the organisation meant that project management meetings were happening every single day. I was very clear with the organisation what the KPIs needed to be as the measures of success. I needed to measure these to make sure that the project remained on track, but I also needed to be in a position where we had objective measures that I could use with the project board to demonstrate the progress we were making and ultimately its success. Okay, on to the next slide. Our colleagues in our IT department did a fantastic job of choosing the right technology partners. Pre-COVID, we took a short list of potential partners through a comprehensive assessment process. And these are all of the checks that I would always recommend that everybody does when choosing a technology partner. So one of the things we looked at were other companies around the world who were using the software that we were considering using. We carried out a financial due diligence assessment to make sure that they were financially sound and were not going to put the project at risk at any point in the future. Considered licensing arrangements and cost, because this was the first step in a global strategy, and we needed to make sure that as we look to scale up the solution and move it into or implement it in other countries, that cost wasn't going to be prohibitive. Wanted to understand what the support requirements and the SLAs were from our potential supplier, because we knew that with a project of this nature that we were going to be pushing the boundaries of what any potential software could do, and we needed to make sure that our software partner was going to be with us at every step of the journey. Invariably, in my experience, there will always be a requirement for bespoke development, hopefully kept to a minimum, but invariably there is always some. So we wanted to understand indicative development costs and options. And then lastly, look at the management reporting capability. The team took a long time making sure that we got the right software solutions. They took a year doing that assessment and then another 3 months looking for the right mobile device to make sure that we chose something that was robust enough to work in not only every country in Africa, but every country around the world, and would provide us with a reliable platform for our software. By working very closely with our partners, we've created mutually beneficial partnerships and ultimately a winning team. Okay, on to the next slide. I've titled this slide the operational jigsaw to try and give you an understanding of how difficult the challenge was for us with understanding the processes that were part of the production operation and how we translated those process steps into a software design. So the picture on the right hand side is the mine from very recently, But when we were designing the mobile software solution, the only document we had available for reference was a high-level site map. And consequently, because we couldn't visit sites, we had to design the solution from home without ever stepping foot on site. It was like trying to put the pieces together of the biggest jigsaw that you've ever attempted, trying to anticipate from the site map what the production processes would be, where our inspectors might be, what inspection data they might be capturing at each step of the process, and how much time they might have at their step in the process to capture the information that they needed. So I spoke at the very start about the importance of the process skill set that I have on the team, and we had to maximize that in how we approached this. So we used process mapping extensively to map all of the expected steps. We looked very closely at the interrelation between those process steps, and when we were capturing the data, how we would bring that together in the database. We used the Six Sigma technique FMEA to assess potential process issues. And then looking ahead to our requirement for very accurate data, we needed to use Poka-yoke techniques to try and prevent the inspectors from making data input errors. This was a really, really tough part of the project for us, where day after day on the project, my team would turn up absolutely exhausted, and they never gave up, and continually tried to develop the picture for what we thought would happen on the mine, which we were then able to start to validate once we received the standard operating procedure 6 weeks before opening. And then we were able to start validating our software designs in the context of those process steps. Once the mine was up and running, we then used value stream mapping to assess the bottlenecks, because our ability to keep up with the pace of operations was a primary requirement for the mine themselves. So exceptionally difficult task for us that we were able to overcome by using these process tools and techniques. Once we had our software available, we took it through a comprehensive testing program. And my rationale with launching technology is that it has to work right first time. If it doesn't work right first time, you start to lose the trust and confidence of your users very quickly. Without being able to go to site and deliver the training on site meant that we were in the world of delivering training remotely. So we employed a train-the-trainer approach. We used video tutorials. We translated some of those video tutorials into Congolese French, but ultimately part of the secret to the successful implementation was we got the solution designs right so that they were easy to use and intuitive, and the training then was a reinforcement rather than meaning that we had to start from scratch. I've always been hugely impressed by our inspectors in Africa with their ability to pick up tech and understand it quickly and easily. But we have a key role in making sure that our designs enable that. We never compromised on testing or training at any stage in the process. We knew that it had to work right first time, and we also knew that we needed to make sure that the inspectors understood how to use the technology correctly. Okay, on to the next slide. Invariably, we were going to have issues with the way that we were trying to work on this project, and a document called a corrective action tracker is always one of the most important documents on any project, in my opinion. It's the document that allows you to record your implementation issues, and we completed an effective root cause analysis using the 5-why analysis technique extensively to make sure that for every single issue that we faced, whether it's system, process, training, or otherwise, we were very clear about what the root cause was, and very specific about what corrective and preventive actions were required to solve the problem. I would never allow an issue to be closed until I was absolutely sure that a successful corrective action had been implemented. Okay, on to the next slide. The third step of the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle is monitoring and measurement. I spoke previously about the importance of clearly defined KPIs. I've always been a firm believer that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I wanted to make sure that we had the right KPIs in place, so there was never any ambiguity on the success criteria for the project. I was able to feed the results from the KPIs from the corrective action tracker into the continuous improvement program, and also we were capturing feedback from the DRC operations team on a daily basis. So in addition to our video conferences with our colleagues in IT, our DRC operations team were hugely supportive in working with us to give us the feedback on how the inspectors were getting on using the technology, what they were finding, whether they're able to keep up with the pace of operations, where they might be having challenges entering the data correctly. And all of this meant I was then in a position to report weekly on the solution performance. Okay, on to the next slide. There were 6 core KPIs that we ran to on the project throughout. The first one is operational efficiency. So this was all about us being able to keep up with the fast-paced operations at the mine. So as you'll recall, in the original requirements review sessions with the mine themselves, the primary requirement was you cannot slow down our production operation. If you do, we won't allow you to use the technology. Operational flexibility was around our inspectors having the ability to be at different places at different times in at the mine and still capture the information they need when they needed to. So this was very much around the interrelation of processes, and then once we captured different data sets in different modules that were aligned to the processes, how do we then bring those data sets together into our overall database and report to the client? Data completeness and data accuracy are very closely aligned. Data ultimately is our product, and our international clients are very clear with us about their expectations on how complete and accurate our information needed to be for the contractual settlements. System reliability is pretty self-explanatory, really. There is no point implementing a technology solution in the middle of Africa if your technology components are not going to be reliable. So we couldn't afford to be in a position where we had to revert to manual inspection processes because our technology had failed. Lastly, stakeholder satisfaction. You'll have a sense already that I had multiple stakeholders to satisfy on this project, both internal and external. So it's very important that I was able to measure their satisfaction effectively. Okay, on to the next slide. The fourth step in the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle is continual improvement. We understood that our clients' inspection reporting requirements meant that we had to drive for a world-class solution. So as part of our continual improvement program, we've constantly focused on small incremental improvements that maximized our data quality and ultimately drove the user engagement. So the feedback from the inspectors and our administrators using the data is absolutely critical, but we've never stopped improving the solution. And again, this goes back to the commitment from the HK project board around quality being at the heart of this solution. Communication on a project of this nature is absolutely key. So I needed to devise the appropriate communication program so that all of the stakeholders are kept fully informed at all times. I was very mindful that my reporting of progress and reporting of performance against the KPIs had to be objective and accurate so that we could always make decisions based on facts. And on every project, however busy or difficult, it's always very important to celebrate and promote success. You know, there's a lot of really tough times on projects. So when you end up being successful, it's very important to celebrate that success, because ultimately everybody wants to be part of a winning team. Okay, on to the next slide. So where did we end up on the project? We now have nearly 100 inspectors working at the mine, and they are collecting around 9 million pieces of data annually. That number is going to increase as we extend the scope of the solution overall. But if we look at our performance against what we set out to achieve and against the KPIs that I specified at the start of the project, our operations efficiency, our inspectors are always able to keep up with the pace of the mine operations. We've never slowed the mine down. And that was always one of the potentially biggest constraints on the project, because the pace of operations at the mine was so fast. We achieved our flexibility requirements, so we can have multiple inspectors in different places at different times at the mine now. And we're always able to capture the information and also bring it together in the database and join it together so that we can report in line with our clients' expectations. Data completeness. The mine is a 24/7 operation, and we never ever miss a single piece of inspection data with the way that we've designed our mobile solution. So we've used field validation, and through intuitive use of other intelligence within the software, we always ensure that the inspectors never miss any information that they need to capture. We've also managed to achieve a 99.993% right first time daily input from our inspectors. What that means is that the same day data reconciliation challenge that our clients set us takes just over an hour every day to do a full reconciliation between the mine's records and AHK's records before sign off and submission to the client. System reliability has been exceptional. So all of the work that our colleagues in our IT department did has been very, very successful. We have a very robust and reliable solution, and we've never had to revert to paper inspection processes. Stakeholder satisfaction. The feedback that we consistently get from our inspectors is that they love using the technology, and they much prefer it to using the traditional paper-based methods. And our major clients are now proactively recommending the solution. Now, that has created a challenge for me in many ways, because as soon as we had won the Digital Innovation Award and our clients became aware of it, our major client insisted that we implemented the mobile technology across the entire supply chain through all countries in Africa. So it meant in September, I was in a position where we had to implement in 5 countries simultaneously across Africa. Now, you'll see the photos on the in the top right-hand corner. I went to Zambia, and I worked with our project manager carrying out the implementation. I did some of the training with the inspectors, and it was an incredibly rewarding experience for me, seeing how well the technology worked, and all of those countless hours and sleepless nights that we'd had trying to build it, actually seeing it used in operation. Those implementations have been extremely successful. So we're now using the technology in Zambia, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, and Tanzania. So yeah, fantastic end to the year with the extension of the implementation through the supply chain. And we won the Digital Innovation Award at the International Quality Awards. The award was fantastic recognition for everybody involved in AHK, testament to all of the hard work that went into the project. For AHK, it's the most prestigious award of its type that we could win for our sector, and commercially very, very important because it's external validation for our clients of the robustness of our solution. It created a palpable buzz in our head office. The event was live streamed onto just about every TV in our entire head office, and yeah, there were a lot of very very proud people when the award was announced. So no, fantastic recognition for everybody involved. What I want to do now is share with you some of the keys to success that I believe are critical in ensuring that any digital innovation implementation is a success. So these are criteria that I've experienced over the years. So I'll walk you through each one briefly. So the first one is make sure you control your project scope. If don't try and do too much. Be very clear about what your deliverables are, and prevent scope creep at all costs. Because if you don't, your project will be at risk of failing. Be very clear at the start of the project what your deliverables are, and get written sign-off of them, so that at no point towards the end of the project is there any ambiguity about what the project was supposed to deliver. I feel it's important to work through a project board because it's important that it's not the project team making the strategic decisions, it's the senior members of the business, and that way you'll ensure that you'll get maximum buy-in, and particularly make sure it's a business-led project as well, because it's the business themselves that know what they need from the project. You'll have seen, hopefully through the presentation, the extensive use of the quality tools and techniques that have been instrumental in the success of this project. As quality professionals, you have these tools available to you. It's really important that you use all of them, and particularly process mapping. So I talk to colleagues in other sectors, in other organisations, and regularly hear about IT projects that have failed. And the one key step that I constantly hear has been missed is this process mapping of the as-is and the to-be processes. It's a really critical step. A couple of things relating to the software itself. One thing that regularly gets missed is checking the reporting capability of the software itself. So businesses tend to get very focused on what the software does and how it works and how it could enable processes, but they miss or they forget to consider whether the reporting capability will fulfill the business's needs. Also check the supplier's development costs. They can end up becoming prohibitive, and you may not get the solution you need if you need any bespoke development. Very important. Projects can sometimes fail as well because the users don't buy into what the technology is going to do for them. Really important as a project team that you demonstrate the benefits. So how does the technology make the individual's job easier or quicker? So very important that you consistently demonstrating the benefits of your technology. Last but not least is training. Projects can get delayed, and if you're working towards a tight deadline, it's usually the training period that gets squeezed. If I'm ever on a project and I hear from a user the system doesn't work, the first thing I go for is the training, because invariably it's because the user doesn't understand how to use the system rather than the fact that the system doesn't work, particularly if you've been diligent in your testing processes throughout the life cycle of the project. So I read a really interesting article from the Harvard Business Review that was published in the autumn last year that said that 87.5% of digital transformations fail to meet their original objectives. It's an extremely high percentage of technology projects fail. Now, there are lots of potential pitfalls on a digital transformation project, but as quality professionals, we have a critical role to play because we have the toolkit to make sure that the projects are a success and that they don't become part of that statistic. Thank you very much. On to the next slide.
Thank you so much, Christian. Lots of detail, lots of food for thought in that presentation. We've got a couple of questions coming. We've got about 10 minutes for questions. A couple have come in. If you want to submit a question, do so in the Q&A section here on Zoom. First question from Jared. At what point did the team determine the project attributes to measure, the methods and the equipment to use?
Right at the very start of the project. So once we had a clear understanding of what the key deliverables were for each stakeholder group, it was at that point I decided what the right KPIs needed to be. So if we take our discussions with the mine, for example, they were very clear with us that yes, we're happy to let you use technology on our site, but you cannot slow down our operation. So from that came the KPI around operational efficiency and measuring how long it took us to complete the process and making sure that we always have the capability to be quicker than the production process itself. So as I went through the key deliverables for each of the stakeholders, it was at that point that I worked out what the right KPIs needed to be.
And related to that, we've got another comment about KPIs, so that there's a risk that the organisation orients itself around the KPIs rather than actually the business needs, and the KPIs stop being an indicator but a driver. How did you make sure that they were the right KPIs and they didn't kind of have unintended consequences that skewed what happened?
That was where the project board came in. So once I'd established what I believed the right KPIs to be, the project board then signed them off. So it was at that point that it wasn't just the project team saying we believe these are the right KPIs for the project. It was also our exec understanding what they believed the right KPIs to be that they wanted to measure us and the project against.
Okay, we've got a question from Neil Baird asking what the ROI was and the increase in efficiency from going down the digital route. I guess related to that, was it a case that the paper-based route was just not an option anymore?
Yes.
But in terms of kind of it's evidencing the impact of what's happened with the implementation, is there any kind of meaningful, measurable comparison with perhaps other mines of a similar size that haven't gone down the digital route?
Very difficult to compare against other mines because the setup is very different, and the mine itself is they are more advanced themselves in the way that they work compared to other mines. We did an exercise whereby we estimated the number of man hours that would be saved compared to manual inspection processes. So we did an academic exercise to work that out, and it was hundreds of man hours. The reconciliation, for example, we're using digital processes that was 4 times quicker than a typical reconciliation process using manual methods.
Obviously, implementing a big project like this to use leverage tech for assurance, there's also the issue of assuring the tech that you're using. Some of that you talked about in terms of the procurement process, but what did you build in to make sure that these very, very complex intelligent systems were actually working, that you could trust what you were getting from it?
From the tech itself, we'd had some experience on a smaller pilot a year or so before we attempted to use the technology on this project. So we knew from what we'd done on a really small scale that the data was being captured accurately and we could transfer it into our databases accurately. We also had the reassurance from the other organizations that were using the software itself, because they were major international companies that were using it for critical purposes. So our assessment plus the validation from other companies using the software for similar processes, but obviously nothing within our sector, that was what helped give us the reassurance. And also, over a period of time, as we were starting to capture the data, because it was continuously coming through consistently correct, that built our trust and confidence in the solution as well.
Yeah, a lot of what you said really resonates with the Quality 4.0 principles that the CQI has put out in terms of co-creation of value, mutual trust, cyber physical systems. A lot of stuff really kind of resonates and validates that. One of the interesting things that you're talking about, and when you talked about the Poka-Yoke, and Neil has asked if you could expand on that, but it's how you manage risk in a project of this size and complexity.
I'll answer the Poka-Yoke question first, if that's okay. So we, within our data capture fields, we have to capture, as an example, the truck registration plate. Now, in the DRC, the truck registration plates have a particular alphanumeric. The alphanumeric entry would be 2 letters, 4 digits, 1 letter. So within our field validation controls, we ensure that our inspector can only enter 2 letters, 4 digits, 1 letter again. The software is intelligent enough to allow us to put those types of controls in to make sure that our inspectors don't put the wrong information in.
And in terms of generally the management of risk in this project?
Management of risk. So we worked closely with our group risk team. So there were two strategies around risk. So there was the traditional strategy around creating the risk register, going through that whole sort of general project risk analysis process. But a lot of the information that ended up in the risk register came from our FMEA analysis. Where was the process likely to break down? What was the likelihood? What was the severity of the impact? So I've got myself and several members of the team done a lot of FMEA work in the past, and we use that extensively in our risk analysis processes.
Excellent. Now, you talked early on in procurement that there wasn't necessarily off-the-shelf products available. Mohammed's asked a little bit about that and the degree to which you were combining existing products as opposed to creating new solutions.
So the mobile device software itself it's effectively a configurable data capture template. So can be used in any sector for any purpose, for any type of data capture. So we configured that to capture the inspection data that we needed in the data in the right order and align, and that was how we were able to align it to the mine's production processes. But that was one of the reasons why the whole operational assessment was so difficult for us, because until the mine opened, we didn't actually understand what those steps were actually going to be. So we were designing blind for a good period of time.
Yeah, Jana Kiraman has asked a couple of questions related to the records that are generated as a result of it. How frequently they're backed up, how they're stored, how they're searchable. With 9 million kind of data points in a year, that's just an incredible data management challenge in itself.
It is, and interestingly, I was only having a conversation with my colleagues in IT about this a couple of weeks ago, because the data that we're capturing is going to rise exponentially, because as the material flows through the supply chain in Africa, it could go through Zambia before it goes to any of the port locations. So that then gives us a multiplier of 3 on the amount of data that we need to capture over a typical year. So it's all cloud-based. Our IT infrastructure team have developed that cloud-based data storage solution. Data's backed up daily. We work with our IT partners who help provide and support some of that infrastructure that allows us to manage our data. The database itself has been developed by our IT department. So there is an interaction between the software supplier and their servers for the data that's captured on the mobile devices, but also how we bring that internally onto our servers as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we're pretty much come to the end of our time. So thank you so much, Christian, for sharing this project with us and answering questions. And thank you to everybody who's attended. The recording of this video will be available in the members area of the CQI website, quality.org, later this week. Don't forget, you can still apply for awards in the International Quality Awards. I think we heard from Christian that this was brilliant for morale, but also good for business for his company doing it last year. So lots of opportunities there for you to shine a light on what's great in your organization, or indeed with your own work as a quality professional. International Quality Awards are part of an event called Quality Live this year. So come along and listen to some great talks at that. Tickets will be available soon. And before you leave, or as you leave, you're going to be prompted to fill a short survey in. It'll only take a couple of minutes, but the results of that will be really very much appreciated by us and help us steer the ongoing webinar program. So once again, thank you so much to Christian for talking to us today, and to everybody for attending, and we will see you again soon.